So I finally forced myself to sit down and start putting together the build footage for our little family camper here. It's been a while and it'll probably be slow going. So I did record most everything of building the camper, from building the frame, the box, and the finishing and everything in different ways. And just kind of as time permitted, whether it'll be a lot of time lapse or me going through an overview after a certain step. But I'd always intended to put that footage together, if not just for myself, kind of a record for this, for our family, for this work. So I'm finally forcing myself to sit down and start putting all that together in each stage. So it's going to start with the frame, and then I think frame and fenders, some adjustments on the next one, and then we'll get into the box. And it starts going really quickly. I started the camper the last day of 2020, so December 31st on 2020, with the intent to use it for Thanksgiving of 2021. And I was welding and fiberglassing the day before we left for that Thanksgiving trip. It was the first time we pulled it out of the garage as a mostly ready camper. There were some things that came afterwards, but was the day we went on the trip. It was a lot of fun, a lot of work, but not too bad. I worked on it as I felt I had time. If we had baseball games, basketball games, kids events, you'd go to all that. It wasn't in a big rush. Took my time. If I needed to stop and think about how I was going to do something for a few days, or wait on a part to get in, or make some changes, there was no real timeline. I mean, I had plenty of time to build it, and if we couldn't use it on Thanksgiving, we could always tent camp. So yeah, it was fun. It was a good process. I'd like to do some of it again. As always, you'd find different ways to do it next time, make some changes here and there. So I'll start putting out each section of the build as I have time. I'm not very good at the editing stuff, but yeah, so as it comes out. But if anybody has a question about a particular area of the camper, feel free to comment below, and I will try to kind of focus on some of those areas that other people are interested in. I know what I was interested in when I was looking at, and still look at, other people's build videos, and want to know how they did a certain thing so that I can adapt that to use in something I'm building. It doesn't even have to be a camper, but anytime you kind of amass that knowledge as a builder, and you have different options, different tools to go to as you're building something. And the more you learn, the more you discover, okay, well, I don't have to do this way anymore. I can adapt this method and it'll come out smoother, better, whatever the case may be. So yeah, so if anybody wants to see something in particular about it, I'll do my best to try to fit that in. And thanks for watching. So I finally went and picked up the metal, and it was time to start trying to build the trailer. First thing, I needed a little chop saw station to cut the metal so I can get the lengths right and have some stops. I was using just a cheap little chop saw I had, and I think I started with a metal cutting blade on it, which burned up quickly at the normal speed of the chop saw, of course, and then I think at some point went to an abrasive blade. Until down the line, I finally bought an appropriate one. So it was cutting everything to length. Now I needed to rig up a little square. It'd be nice to have something like the Fireball Tools squares, but I don't do enough of it to warrant that just yet. So cleaning the ends and gonna start setting up the outside of the frame. This is where I started running into the first rounds of trouble. I got it perfectly square right here. Really, it was nice, but I was trying to tack it with the stick, and that's where I had trouble. Had I had the MIG already and could tack everything with the MIG, hold it in place, get the trailer. That's what I should have done, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing if I ever get to do another one. I think I could do it a lot better, quicker. It's the second time around. But at this point, I'm still trying to tack it with a stick, and I didn't have a whole lot of luck. So I wound up, in the end, putting too much heat in and pulling the metal, which caused me a lot of problems trying to get it square. And of course, this is what I'm trying to figure out. Because I had it perfectly square and then I lost it, and I worked and worked and worked. Right now I'm just practicing welding. I took some time each day to try to practice welds from different positions on different butt joints from the metal. Now it's back to cleaning it up. So I went ahead and tacked each corner pretty decently. I might have run a bead or two. Honestly, I don't remember at this point. I know I put too much heat in it, and so I started pulling the metal. But at the time, I didn't realize what was going on. Everything's a learning curve. I was new to it. I'd welded on my motorcycle years past, but not a professional. So at this point, I'm trying to figure out. I wanted to start perfectly square, and I was having trouble. So the only thing I've wound up doing, taking it back apart and shaving off a little bit from each cut and basically starting over. And then still doing the same thing. I got it closer to square, but it was still off. So basically I had to build the rest of the trailer with, I can't remember, I think it was a 3/8 or an 1/8, maybe a 3/8 out. It's been a little bit now, but basically out of square, and I had to build everything around that. So all the cuts from here on are custom fit for that side. When I get to mounting the axles, it's taken into account. So the axle to the nose is true. It runs behind the truck great, but I'd love to try this again. And God, no, I could do it better and start off with some different metals, change the design. But right here, I'm sticking with it. We recut everything, welded it, and again, had I had a MIG or know how to better tack with a stick, I could have made this work. But my version of tacking, I'd get it all in place and just basically run a bead to hold it, and that was putting a lot of heat in that metal. Don't think I already said, but this is all 2-inch 3/16 metal, and then my center channel is going to be a 2.5-inch 3/16. So it's overkill. It's a lot of metal. So now I'm putting the cross bracing in, same 2-inch tubing. I wanted the top to be flush so I could build my floor off of it and not have any cavities for the box to sit in and hold water. Everything was trying to keep the water flowing or out. Down the road, I'm going to have to redo this, but here's causing myself some more trouble. So the more you know, the more you won't do it next time. But again, because of what I'm welding with that stick, I went ahead and started putting all the heat in. I was going from corner to corner, inside to outside, top to bottom, doing kind of figure eight like you would on putting a tire on, doing the circle pattern or something. But it was still putting too much heat into that metal too early before having all the pieces in place to hold it. So again, out of square, bows, pulling metal, causing problems that I had to work with down the road that I'd love to, I've said this before, get a chance to try it again. Here, that center channel, 2.5-inch 3/16, running the full length of the trailer, 14 feet. And I wanted it run at full length. So I was just finding center, cleaning up the metal, and putting those welds in. On that stick, I was running 70/18, 1/8-inch stick, and I finally learned to just put the stick in and run the bead. Don't move it. Don't do any kind of pattern with it. Just put it in, let it build the puddle, and drive the puddle across the joint. And then everything changed once I figured that out finally. So that's just getting a view of how I want the A-frame portion to come across, because I would like them at this point to do what you're seeing around the tire there. I want the same A-frame to come and be my step and kind of guard from the tire. and just running more welds. Again, like I said, at each step I would kind of finish weld that step, which I knew wasn't the best thing to do, but it was what I had to do, or what I thought I had to do at the time. I've got a 110 MIG now, so went and got another order, picked up another supply of metal. That's going to be fenders, some bike rack stuff, some other things. And my Timbren 3,500 pound axles finally came in. I think I waited 2 months on those. And this is, again, where I noticed I should have done some things differently. When I designed the trailer in my head, originally I was going to use a normal leaf spring setup. So the 2x2 square tubing was going to work just fine. Then I discovered, Dexter axles, Timbren axles, and just started going bigger and bigger until I loved the Timbren, and it was a great buy. But I should have 2x3 side metal, at least on the sides, for these 3,500 pound axles. I think the 2,000 or whatever, the slightly smaller ones would work and center up the mounting bolts on the 2x2, but these 3/4 won't. You need to be center up, and to center up in the metal where the bolts go and not be cutting through the top or bottom, you need to have a 2x3. So here I pull out that center channel, and this is some 1/4 inch 4-inch angle that I'm going to cut the tops and sides off and weld into each side to give me the sidewall I need and the strength I need to mount those Timbren axles. And then I'll put the center bracing back in once I get that all set. It was a lot of cutting on that 4-inch 1/4 inch angle, but I think it's plenty strong enough. And you see it rests up there nicely. I can mount it from the underside and from the side, because I'm going to run 2 pieces of that 4-inch angle on each side. So there's a piece on the inside, and there's going to be a piece that wraps around the 2-inch, and there it goes in. I just had to cut it to fit so it would be flush and they're not overlapping each other. I had to cut that 2-inch down, that 4-inch down to 2 inches and make it flush. So now I've got a flat surface and more than enough metal to hold this thing. It's not going anywhere. And then when the center channel goes back in, and I was even considering running the cross bracing from the Timbren from each Timbren across. That's kind of set up there if you don't have a cross brace, which meant I would have had to cut my center channel, and I would have Frenched it in where I would weld it all back together. But that was definitely even more overkill. So I let it sit as it stands, and figured if I needed it, I'd put it in down the road. And so now, every time I needed to weld something, I'd flip the frame I'm building upside down, put it up on this side. I have some weightlifting rings that I use on the other side that I would tie it up when I needed to move it to that side. It was getting pretty heavy at this point, but I could still manipulate it on my own for now. So we get those 1/4 inch angle mounted and in place and welded up or tacked in place at this point. Then it's time to figure out where the axles need to go. And so I can put that cross bracing back in. But again, setting the axles, you need to figure out the math on if you're going to use the 40-60. I actually did a weight and balance for the trailer and included the water that I wanted down the road, the front box, a ton box for a little bit of wood, the stuff on the inside, the garage in the back. So I actually drew up a weight and balance and did the datum distances for the moments and everything, and came up where I wanted the trailer, where I wanted the axles. The only problem was down the road in what'll I guess probably be maybe the next video, I wound up lengthening the trailer. So it kind of changed where the axles wound up being. It still works out, it just adds a little more tongue weight than I wanted, but it's still within the standards for your standard 1,500 pound truck. So not that big of a deal, but I did wind up changing the trailer again after it was almost all said and done. Drilling through all that metal, 2 layers of 1/4 inch angle, the 2x2 3/16, took some doing. half-inch drill, of course, and start with a little bit and work your way up to the, I think those are 5/8 bolts on those things, if I'm not mistaken. Grade 8, and I ordered all of, I'll try to link stuff, but I ordered it all from, I can't remember the name of that company, but it's a hardware company, and they have everything, and it was great. But so I had to rig up some pipe clamps to make my own little on-the-fly drill press that I could lean into to drill the holes through the side. Once I set that up and using a couple different pipe clamps, then it really started becoming doable. I spent, I think at the first or second hole, I spent an hour or more just trying to get the one done. Keeping it, the drill running slow, keeping it oiled up, but with sharpening blades, sharpening drill bits and everything. But once I figured out how to get those pipe clamps, it started going a little more smoothly at that point. These are some tires off my old truck from out back that had the same bolt pattern, but I was never going to keep them on these wheels. It just was to kind of help me set up where I thought the fender needed to go and where my steps were going to be. And I believe now we're going to put that center channel, or that center cross bracing back in, now that I knew where all the bolts were in the timber and axles. Because I didn't want to cover up any bolts, and I wanted to leave access to them if I ever need to pull an axle off when it's all said and done. Was trying to plan and build this thing so that I had access to everything I needed to, the wiring as I go down the road. I'm not kind of boxing myself in where I have to destruct things to fix them. And right here, finally decided how I'm going to do the A-frame portion of the trailer coming back. And a lot of this was just about making the decisions and looking at it 100 different ways, drawing some things up on paper, coming back to the trailer after drawing it and staring at it. And you just keep staring at it until you decide, yes, that will work. And I've thought about as many curveballs as I can think of, stuff down the road. By making this decision now, what's it going to do to me 5 steps down the road when I get to doing the fiberglass or even the wood? So just trying to think it out and move slowly but continuously. And I think it paid off in the end. I mean, I would change some things, of course, but I think we all would build something differently the second time. And that's what it's about. So I got one side on, clamped up some leftover of that 1/4-inch angle so I could hold the frame up on the front. And I put basically what's going to be the fender mounts, the 10-inch section coming off of the trailer frame, where once I finally decided the spacing, I think it was 36 inches, off the trailer square, then I had the point for the A-frame where it could come from where I wanted it on the trailer tongue back to that scabbed out piece of metal that will make the step for me to get up on the roof and climb on and around the trailer down the road. And then I'll just put in some pieces on the back so that it kind of has a similar look on the front side and the back side, as well as a step. So now I got to take the axles off and weld it. Start welding everything down. But that's the trailer as I had originally planned it. It's going to change down the road. Once I figured out I couldn't do everything inside the way I wanted it, made some alterations. But here we are I cut some of the 2-inch metal just on some angles and tacked them on. I think I've got 8 of them under there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 8, and there will be 12 when on the final change. Now I've got the 110 MIG, and tacking it on there is a whole lot easier now, so I can tack everything and then run a bead with that 7018 stick, which will really bite. But those tabs that I'm welding on are where the bolts will go through the box of the trailer and hold it to the frame. Again, I've got access to them all, so if I need to unbolt them, tighten them, check them, or take the box off the trailer, I've got access to every bit of it. I'm not covering up one portion of the build down the road. So here's just cleaning all the mill scale off, because I'm going to, I was going to powder coat it. I was thinking about that POR 15 stuff. I wound up just going with some topside marine paint for that you would put above the waterline on a boat, both the primer and the paint. I didn't record putting the primer on, but after all the mill scale was cleaned up with some abrasive pads, I primed the whole thing, and then I'll cover it in the black paint, which is what's going up now. And other than me spilling quite a bit of primer right there in the middle of my garage floor, this part went on fairly smoothly. And being enamel, it has a nice finish. It kind of self-levels itself. But it painted, the axles bolted and torqued on, and now we're going to start moving forward a little quicker. Building the metal part of the trailers, first one I've ever done. It took a little while because I was designing in my head as I went. I didn't use some CAD program or anything. I guess now I'm torquing them. But yeah, I knew in my head what I wanted to do, and I would kind of play around with getting that on paper, drawing the measurements up. I drew a scale version of everything on graphing paper, and it just came down to making it happen in 3D. So this is going to be the first test drive. I had to rig up some chains, rig up some lights, just so I could take it down the road, and hope that it didn't drive beside my truck, that it actually followed the truck down the road. That was not really the worry, but that was the plan at this point. And first time getting pulled out of the garage right here. And it was nice and heavy at this point too. All that 3/16 metal, 1/8 inch tubing, 2x3 for the exterior frame, and 2x2 on the inside. It's gonna be super strong. The 3/16 was quite a bit of overkill. But I have a family of 5. Everybody is large humans, and I wanted to make sure that nothing was going to fail on me. I've got 3 of my lovely kids sleeping in the rooftop tent. Occasionally I'm in the tent in the top, and we're big. There's a lot of weight up there. So I wanted to build it robust enough to not have any worries about that. Yeah, so it turned out it rode behind the truck nicely. It tracked behind it. The timber and axles, I believe you can see them in action here pretty decently. I didn't go very far, just kind of around the neighborhood, hit one fast road to make sure, but you see the trailer's not bouncing. Those timber and axles are great. I've really liked them. We just went 4,200 miles out to Montana and Yellowstone, and there was, I think, twice where I saw the trailer bounce, and there's some pretty good dips when that happened. But they do a great job. I'm very pleased with those axles. Down the road, I went with the level, no lifted version of the timber and axles. I've been thinking maybe down the road I might put the 2-inch lift version on, but I don't know why. It's just one of those things you're always looking for stuff to change. So that was the first run of the trailer, which I couldn't see backing it in. You know, that without a box or anything on it, you're kind of backing it up blindly. I guess you do have the camera on the new truck, but still. That was it. That's the first version of my trailer frame. It was a lot of fun. I would love to do this part again because I've got ideas in my head. I know that I can make it better. I can make it quicker. You know, when you build things, that's what gets you excited. This one's done. I would like to do another one, but that's not something I can do right now. It's expensive, time consuming, and we have other projects that need addressing.